This episode of Doom Patrol was mostly about Larry embracing and accepting who he is. I think his identity as a gay man and maybe being a bit more comfortable in his own skin. Because, I think that those are the two things, well, two of the things that have kind of two barriers that Larry faces on the show right now. I think the other is how to deal with his negative spirit. And, the secondary plot was, Jane and the team dealing with her persona Karen in this weird like 90s rom-com, obsession that Karen had, which led to the cliffhanger in the episode. But, I'll focus, this episode was primarily on Larry and, Danny the Street, really like, popular character from Doom Patrol comics. So I'll focus on there. It was nice to see Danny show up. I knew Danny was going to be here eventually because Danny, the sentient street, and currently now he's a sentient ambulance and slash world in the current Doom Patrol comic. But he started out as, a sentient, mobile street. It was nice to see him. I think that's a cool concept and a cool idea. I've always found the Danny character to be very interesting. And I think it's kind of cool and comforting. I guess if you could have a friend who was an actual street who could talk to you. I guess that's weird that I think that, but it would be nice to go to a place. I don't know if in real life it would actually ever work like this, because every community has its drawbacks. I mean, nothing's completely perfect, but it would be nice to go to a place. Because Danny's whole point originally, and still today, is he likes to be a haven for people who are, outcasts, or at least who feel uncomfortable or like they don't belong in regular society. He would take in people who felt like there was nowhere else for them to go, or they would just feel comfortable, with him in his world. And, not in the regular world or, the world we do live in. That's why, a lot of people who live in Danny Street, are LGBT, genderqueer, and other, people who are injured. You saw like some snippets of the types of people who were there, residents there, on the show. And in the comics, it was mostly like that too. Although they weren't all, there were a lot more, I guess, people, if I remember some of the earlier panels in the older comics, who were not, I think they weren't supposed to be genderqueer or anything like that, LGBT. They were just supposed to be also just people who didn't feel like they fit in or for whatever reason were cast out. But this this Doom Patrol episode really emphasized, I think, heavily that Danny Street was like a haven or a safe space for people in, the LGBT community. Like they really, homed in on that. Especially with, that main character, the drag queen. I forget the character's name off the top of my head. She was interesting. The one who was the agent from, like, the Bureau of Normalcy who, went to investigate Danny and wound up, to joining Danny to become a denizen. He was a cool character. I'm interested to see if we'll see more of him. So, they really did emphasize, the whole queerness aspect of Danny. And I think because this episode was really, mostly to help like Larry, who is gay, more openly embrace and accept who he is. And so I think, and Matt Bomer himself is gay. So I think that's why, they really leaned in heavily to the genderqueer LGBT aspect of Danny and not Danny being for everyone who's outcast, not only LGBT, people. I hope I'm kind of making sense there. And one thing I thought it was funny was I liked when near the end of the episode when Larry Negative Man was sitting in the cabaret show, the Perpetual Cabaret, and one of the performers, the people who worked there, held a mic to his face, and was like, sing for us. And then there's this whole song and dance number, and you think it's really happening, and then they cut, and like it's really like it was all in Larry's head and never happened. I actually thought that was funny because I thought they actually I bought it. I thought it was really happening. But then when I found out that it was an illusion or something he was thinking about doing and didn't actually happen, I was like, that was the first time I laughed out loud in the show because I thought that was just pretty funny. But I do think it's interesting that, I think that it was supposed to be something that he was thinking about doing or wanting to do, fantasizing, but didn't do. So he totally, wants to burst out of his shell. And I think he's on the verge of, embracing himself, as, a gay person. And he's going to be he already acknowledges and accepts that he's gay, but he's kind of doesn't really seem to revel in it or be too comfortable with it. And I think that, he totally wants to do that, but he doesn't have the guts or the strength to do it. He's afraid to do it, or maybe he doesn't know how. And I think part of his character arc, Larry's in the show, is going to be to do that. We saw at the end when him and Cyborg, when Danny teleported them back to Doom Manor, And, that's when Larry was like singing or pretending that he could sing. And then, and near the end of the episode. So I think he's going to get there. He's not there yet. Interesting, though, that he was only comfortable doing that when it was just him and Cyborg, not in front of a crowd of people. So I think maybe he is still kind of like only comfortable being openly gay, I guess, behind closed doors and when he's around people he's comfortable with, not in the general public. That's an interesting, distinction to make. But interesting. I like Danny and also his antagonist, Darren Cross, right? He was with the Bureau of Normalcy, which is different. In the comics, the bureau he was with was called the Men from Nowhere, and Nowhere was an acronym for something or an abbreviation. But they changed it to the Bureau of Normalcy, and I guess they did that because I guess they wanted to avoid confusion with like the Man from Nowhere, which is a movie that came out before, and there's also the Man from Uncle, which is an old TV show. So I'm thinking maybe the Doom Patrol TV show didn't want to confuse people, so they changed the name to the Bureau of Normalcy. Because the Bureau of Normalcy is not what that organization was called in the old comics. They were called the Men from Nowhere, I think. And they worked for an agency, but that agency wasn't called the Bureau of Normalcy, if I remember. I think it was just called the agency. And they had like a base in the Pentagon, and they were tasked with eradicating, weird people from the world, which is a stupid, nebulous thing to be able to do because weirdness is not something you can eradicate, but that was their mission. And so this episode of the Doom Patrol is, the live action adaptation of that concept that was introduced in the comics, along with Danny and his perpetual cabaret, which is also from the comics. And then as for Jane, we learn more about, Jane's multiple personalities are gateways to different episodes, right? I mean, Jane's entire story arc, you could do like for the rest of the show, different episodes, them dealing with the team members and Jane herself dealing with different personality members, and that being subplots or plots, which is what happened in this episode. And then the cliffhanger was, the Karen persona being dragged back in Jane's head to somewhere else. That is a reference to, it was like on a train tracks in a train station or, like a railway. That's a reference to in the old comics, Jane's multiple personalities in her head. The way that she compartmentalized them was there was like a train station in her head, and there were different personalities. When a different personality was dormant, it would ride the train to like the front, and the rest would be back at the station. And then when she would have a different personality, that personality would leave the station, so to speak, and come to the forefront. And so that, I think, when we see, Karen being dragged away by the track in this episode, I think that is what that's referring to. And the cliffhanger was, that. So I think next episode is going to be more of them dealing with the root or, the complete picture of Jane's personalities, where they come from, how they manifest. I think Doom Patrol is going to get to that because that's how this episode ended. But all in all, very good episode. This episode, I think, was more about just, these plot lines, the main A plot with Larry and the B plot with Jane. I think the entire purpose of them was for us to get more to the root of Larry and Jane's problems and their sense of identity. And Danny in the A plot was used to help, the Larry storyline. But we did get to meet Danny as a character, and Danny's cool, and I hope to see more of him. I did think that the ending of this episode, when like the Denizens and the Doom Patrol fought off the Men from Nowhere and Darren Cross, the Men from the Bureau and Darren Cross, their defeat of them was a little bit too easy because they basically beat up Darren Cross and told him, yeah, go back and tell the Bureau to leave us alone. And I'm like, that's not going to work. I mean, if they're an actual legit organization, they're just going to come back with more men, with more people to try to destroy this street even more. So I wasn't sure that like the Doom Patrol and the Denizens really solved anything. They did stand up and put up a fight, so it was probably good for them to stand up to their bully, for them, like mentally and emotionally. It's always good to stand up to people who are bothering you. But even so, realistically, since this is an organization, not a person, there's a good chance that they're still going to try to hunt Danny down. So I think we may not have seen the last of Darren Cross and the Bureau in this episode. So, I think that the Denizens, Danny, and the Doom Patrol, they need to be ready for a return of these people with probably, more reinforcements and more guns. But all in all, an interesting episode. The way that I talked about it now is the way I interpreted what was happening here. Maybe if you've seen it, you may think that my analysis was different. But, I do like, us getting more into the character explorations of, these people. And I like seeing, all these different members of the Doom Patrol throughout its history show up as guest stars. In this episode, it was Danny, and it was nice to see Danny. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.